Hi and welcome to Penser Bank. My name is Markus Almerud and I'm an analyst here at the bank. Today I have with me Boheman, who's CEO at Instalco. Hi Robin.
Hi Markus.
A warm welcome.
Thank you.
Instalco. Instalco has grown very rapidly, created in 2014. You've been with the company from the start. You've been head of M&A, you've been CFO, and now you're CEO. Since about a year. How do you think that how do you plan to set your mark with the company?
First of all, like you said, I've been with the company since 2014. So I've been part of the management team ever since we started, and so for me it's not about setting my mark. I think I've basically done that in some sense already. And I've been part of all the decisions we made. So the thing here is that it is business as usual a little bit. I mean, we will keep our companies, run it the same way. I mean, we are a decentralized structure. So everything, like the foundation of Instalco, will be the same. I think a little bit of a shift of focus is perhaps, I mean, we've grown quite rapidly. Being the CEO of Instalco is a little bit different today than it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago when we started. Then the CEO was perhaps more involved in projects and so forth, and now it's a different company. We're listed at a large cap and so forth. So the role of the CEO has changed a bit. When it comes to kind of me putting my mark on the company, I think what I'm together with my management team working a lot about our 3 focus areas at the moment. So we will kind of work on focus areas more, and the focus areas at the moment are the industrial growth. We're looking at a lot of industrial installation companies. So basically same type of installation. So we continue with the same core business, but we do it with the end customer being sort of say an industrial company. So SSAB, Northvolt, H2 Green Steel, so forth, those type of companies, instead of being NCC, Peab, building houses, so forth. So that's one focus area. We will also focus and have started focusing a lot the last year on the rest of Nordics. So we are divided into Sweden and rest of Nordics, and rest of Nordics being Norway and Finland. So you will see quite some growth there. And the kind of thesis that we are following is that we need to kind of close the gaps. So prior to COVID, we did some acquisitions, so we're a little bit too spread out, I would say, in rest of Nordics. So I do think that if we can kind of tighten that together, get a few companies in the same area, then we will also see more collaboration, more cross-selling, and a more stable Instalco as well. And last but not least, like a year and a half ago, we really started to accelerate our technical consultancy business, which is now basically 300 consultants, making it easier for us to come in earlier in projects, also able to kind of deliver a full package to our end customer. So I think that's maybe, if you want to say like, what am I doing differently, I would say that those 3 focus areas is a little bit different on what we have been.
And kind of the same questions, but in a different way. If you turn the clock forward like 5-10 years from now, and you're in the same position as Per, you're about to move to hand over the company to somebody else. Let's say hypothetically, of course.
You won't get rid of me that easy.
But hypothetically, I mean, if we talk about legacy, so where do you think you will be in 5 to 10 years' time? What will you have done with the company? If it's a blank sheet of paper and nothing is set in stone, we all know that. But if you can dream a little bit.
I think kind of the goal here is, and it comes back to a little bit the focus areas, I think that you will see a more stable Instalco. You will see an Instalco that is not focused just on the construction industry. So you will have a clear, sort of say, segment that is industrials. So installation in industrials, you will have a clean, which was probably the largest one, being of course regular, sort of say, installations. And you will have the technical consultants. So you will see 3 more clear, so to say, areas. and you will see us also in not only the Nordics. You will see us in a few more countries. I think that is the plan.
Okay.
So Northern Europe might be our, so to say, playing field.
Okay. And if we continue kind of not on the same track, but if we talk about growth, because that's how we will get there, right?
Yeah.
So M&A has always been part of your DNA.
Yeah.
And you have target to grow by 10% per year, but you've grown a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years. So how do you look upon the balance between organic growth and M&A going forward?
I think M&A growth will absolutely be the kind of main driver for us, due to the fact that kind of we still have so many sort of green fields where we are not present and so forth. So we will still do a lot of M&A just to kind of tighten that up. As I said, for instance, in Finland and Norway, and of course also if you go into other countries as well eventually. So that will be the main growth. When it comes to organic growth, we don't really focus on it in that sense. It kind of happens in a sense. I mean, we are largely a project-based business, so we follow our customers, and so in that sense, it's very risky to set a target for organic growth in the fact that we can always get organic growth. It's a matter of if we price down, we could grow a lot, but we don't want to do that. We want to protect the margin in that sense. So I'm a little bit cautious on talking too much about organic growth, especially that sometimes it becomes very, very much in the focus of the quarter and so forth, which in a project-based company is very hard. But over time we have proven ourselves. We continue to do organic growth. If you look at a longer period of time, we outgrow the market. So I do think that we can kind of continue on the path that we've been, and that's a few percentage a year. But the focus is on the total growth, so we don't really divide it up this much on M&A, this much organic.
Okay. But the main driver going forward will, as in the past, will continue to be M&A. That will be the main driver. And if we continue on that track, I mean, you have been spending the past couple of years consolidating the installation market. I think it's fair to say. And you currently have about 120 subsidiaries. You just passed the 20 billion krona mark in terms of revenues. And I know a very common question for your type of companies, that is acquisition-driven companies, is kind of when is the market saturated? That is, how much more is there to do? Does it ever end?
I mean, I think there is an end in every country, but I don't see a problem of going to another country. I mean, there is, of course, somewhere we will be kind of enough in Sweden, so to say, because we have consolidated Sweden. We are not there yet. There is still a lot to be done in Sweden, but we have our criteria, and to us, that's something we won't change in that sense. I mean, we buy best-in-class companies with good track record, solid performance, good management teams, and of course, they're not endless companies like that in Sweden. So, of course, we will eventually go there. But looking at Sweden, where we have like 90 companies, 80, 90 companies, I'm not saying we can have 80, 90 companies in Finland and Norway because they are smaller countries and smaller population. But that just gives you a feel of like, okay, there's still quite a lot of growth that could be done in Finland and Norway just to come to sort of say where Sweden is today. So there is a lot to be done. But eventually we will open up a new country, I think.
But if we talk about Sweden also, I mean, you said you had 90 subsidiaries, but there's still, I mean, just to be clear, we're not there yet. I mean, we're not done in Sweden.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are in the Nordics. There are still 25,000 registered companies in the installation with the sort of installation mark on them. So there is still plenty to be done. I mean, looking at Sweden, we don't have any we have very limited presence in Småland. We don't have so much presence up in the northern coasts. So I mean, there are still a lot to be done. We can still grow in Gothenburg. We're not that strong yet. We have a few companies. I think basically we can grow in all our regions. Perhaps we're a little bit filled up when it comes to kind of plumbing in Stockholm, where we have 6 companies. So I mean, that just shows you that we have tremendous possibilities, and now also with the industrials, which is a very strong sector in Sweden, and also with technical consultants, we can move to those areas and grow there in Sweden, for instance.
Okay, okay. And continue on the acquisition track, because sometimes you're referred to as a compounder. You put yourself, I mean, you are put together with a group of companies which are also acquisition driven. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. So in what way are you different from those types of companies, that is, if we take Indutrade, Lagercrantz, AdTech, and also another comparison group is companies such as Bravida, Caverion, etc. So how do you differ?
I think if we start with, we can maybe do it like this. So say like Bravida, Assemblin, and Caverion is here, and we're quite similar when it comes to what type of projects we take. So we compete project-wise here, meaning that we build the same thing, we install the same type of things. So we are definitely competing here, but they have a more centralized structure, whereas we have a decentralized structure. We run a multi-brand strategy. They have one brand strategy. So I mean, taking a project, if you as a builder comes to us, we will say, okay, you can go to Rörläggaren or Rörgruppen, part of Instalco, whereas they would say, okay, welcome to Bravida, and this is how we do it. So there is that big difference there, I would say. That's the main difference. Then they're also buying up companies and so forth, but then they, of course, they change the name, they change, so to say, how they act and how they run the business. They have to run it their way, so to say. If you look at kind of the other companies like Lagercrantz and the ones you mentioned there with the Indutrade and so forth, in how we are structured at Instalco, we're quite similar. I mean, in that sense, you could argue that we are, so to say, an investment company, in that sense that we have a small head office running a lot of working on M&A and doing all the financial, so to say, work that has to be done to be a listed company. So in that sense, we're quite similar. The difference here between these companies are that we are in one, so to say, area. We do installations, basically. So we work a lot with synergies, trying to find cross-selling and so forth. I think that will be harder for these companies that are like Lagercrantz and those. I mean, they are all over. So we're more specialized in that sense. So that's maybe, so I would put us maybe somewhere in the middle, so to say. We do in one business, so there we are quite similar to Bravida and Assemblin, but when it comes to kind of how Instalco is structured, we're more similar to Indutrade, Lifco and so forth.
And we talk about structure, then you talk about the operation, the decentralization, etc.
Decentralization. I mean, if you would look at the organic or organization sheet, I mean, for Lagercrantz or Lifco or whoever, and compare it with ours, we will be quite similar. We run it quite similar pattern, so to say.
Okay, okay. And now I call you, I mean, I put you in the group of so-called compounders. I know that you don't really agree with the term, and I think you call yourself quality acquirer. So let's talk a little bit about, let's explain what you mean by that.
I think compounder we can live with. I think what has happened kind of recently is that we have been put in sort of say you put everyone in and you call everyone like serial acquirer, and I think that is to me a little bit of a misunderstanding, because to me a serial acquirer is someone that acquires businesses and to be honest maybe does it like runningly and not really with a larger plan at hand. You acquire any type of companies. To me, at least my view is a compounder is looking at a specific area and tries to put companies in that area together and do something with them, and that I'm more more okay with, so to say.
Okay, okay.
And when it comes to kind of what we then do is in our business we look for quality. So we have even narrowed. We narrowed it down to an installation business, and now we're also narrowing it down to quality companies. So you have to have like I said before, like a solid track record, a solid management team, a plan for the future and so forth. So we've narrowed it down quite a lot.
And let's come back maybe to a little bit to I find it fascinating with the consolidation of the market, and I know that we talk technical consultants, yeah. And then we have the industrial market, and then we have the installation market, the construction, yeah. And you've been consolidating the construction market for some time, yeah. And you just started with the industrial market. Is it possible at all to talk about kind of what is the level of consolidation in these two markets? That is, the fragmentation rate for the industrial companies versus could you basically do the exact same thing over time and reach the same kind of growth rates when you go in this new track?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the growth rate now is fastest when it comes to the industrial segment at the moment. That's where we're growing the fastest at the moment. We cannot grow as big as we are in installation because that, so to say, total market is smaller. But we could absolutely go on for a few years keeping our growth target just in the industrial sector.
And the companies are a little bit larger, right?
I mean, that's one of the reasons. They're a little bit larger. They tend to be a little bit more profitable also, although they tie up a little bit more capital. Not due to that they have like a lot of, so to say, production units, but they do have a little bit larger, they need to have some pre-production and so forth, because working for the industry, it's always special. It's not off the shelf. I mean, installing an apartment or a shopping mall or a hospital, you can buy most of the stuff off the shelf and install. But when it comes to the industry, it's always like something special. So you need to have kind of a little bit of prefabrication. So that's why they tie up a little bit more capital. Otherwise, they're.
And if we continue on the same track, and maybe I jumped the gun a little bit, but if we turn it back just a little bit and look at the background again and where you're coming from, and what made you go into technical consulting and also industrial installation? I mean, what was the kind of trigger that made you go that way? And especially maybe, I can understand in a way, but it's still interesting to hear your thoughts about it, but why, given the similarities between the construction market and industrial installation, it's kind of the same. But then we had, at least to an outside observer, it's a little bit more off the shelf or off the mark, so to speak, in technical consulting. So just explain how these go together and what the background of it all is.
So if we start with the industrials, then I think that the background was that basically one of the first companies we acquired was a company focused on the industry. It was Orab, which was one of the first 5 companies we acquired. So they've been part of us since 2014. So I think the idea has always been there somewhere in the back of our head. Then myself, I have a background from Scania. So then the opportunity came to buy Scania's installation business that they had themselves, and that I knew a little bit from my time at Scania as well, and thought that maybe not core business for Scania to have. So then we acquired that, and then the wheels started to roll a little bit, and I've always had the idea that it would be interesting to do an Instalco, so to say, within the industrial installations, because nobody's done that. So it was also opening up, so to say, a new field of possibilities, and we saw synergies and also saw that there is nobody like us there, so it was a good fit for a lot of these companies. So I think that was the main reason. We saw also profitability a little bit higher, so I think that was the main reasons why we switched over and focused a little bit on that as well.
But there's two complete separate businesses. There's no synergy, so to speak, between the two
It's not the same type of synergies in the sense that we can't have like a purchasing agreement, because like I said before, working for a construction company, then it's a lot of off-the-shelf products. Industrial, it's a lot you have to kind of buy a little bit off the shelf and then you have to fix it, so to say. So in that sense, it is a bit different. But on the other hand, when it comes to installers, welders and so forth, they can shift between. I mean, it's not a big difference in that sense that, okay, if you want to install that large pipe or that, it's the same thing that needs to be welded. It's a little bit harder to weld, of course, a larger one, but if you can weld a larger one, you can weld a smaller one, basically. So there are those synergies where we can kind of move people around. Industry tends to be more like this in the fact that you get a project which is shorter, so you need to have a lot of staff, and then you kind of, once the project is done, you have to send them home, so to say, or get them on a new project. Obviously, you want to get them immediately on a new project, but that doesn't always happen in that sense. So they are a little bit more fluctuating or volatile in that sense. And if we can even that out with the installation business, that we can kind of, instead of sending them home, we can have them do some regular installations. Yeah. We can kind of even that out a bit. So there are some synergies here. And also, like, there's of course a lot of regular installations also being done at these industrial companies as well. So we can kind of cross-sell a bit as well there.
And to pick up on something you said, maybe I'm changing tack a bit, and we'll get back just in a second. Yeah, but just to pick up on what you said about moving people around, because we are going into maybe more trouble sometimes, and we don't know exactly what the future will hold. But let's say that we go into worse times, yeah, and the business cycle turns down. You were talking about moving people around, and if you look at the business overall, and you have obviously a large exposure to construction, and that's one of the main concerns in the market, is the construction market. Yeah. But we also know that there are different cycles within the construction market as well, and you have quite a broad exposure, both for your employees, but also in your different subsidiaries. Are you able to kind of, move around from different types of businesses? Explain a little bit how it works.
Yeah, I mean, that's also one thing that I didn't mention about if we just finish on the industrial side first, is that we are in Sweden or in Nordics basically changing the whole industrial concept. I mean, we're switching focus. I mean, we're looking at the battery factories, we're looking at CO2 emissions going down, we're looking at carbon neutral steel and so forth. I mean, there is a industrial change in the Nordics. So that was also a play that we took, that, okay, this will happen, whether we are in, so to say, recession or not, this shift will happen. So that's also why we took a bet on it. So I think that also explains a little bit that we can move people around. So if construction industry goes down a lot, we can move people into the industrial sector, and vice versa. Of course, it's not as easy as moving them around within their segments. It's much easier, but it can be done. Some people we can move, some we can't. It depends on a little bit the personality or the skill set, so to say. Then your second question there, where we look at kind of within the construction industry, I do think that we will see quite a lot of shift. I mean, we will see lower numbers when it comes to kind of production of apartments and so forth, absolutely. But on the other hand, we will see more investments going into energy efficiency. We'll see more investments into schools and hospitals and so forth. So I think that we can move people within that sector quite easily around. There are, of course, always a few that are very specialized. Those are harder to move, but it's not like we're going to stop producing apartments. So if we at least have a few apartments, we can always put the, so to say, specialists on that, and then we can move the rest around. And one other thing is that the industry is quite flexible also in the sense of how we employ people. We always have like a buffer of rented in staff to be able to handle also the ups and downs. I mean, this is very common in the construction industry. So it's not the first time we're talking about the construction industry going down or up, and it's happened before. So I mean, and okay, Instalco might have been founded in 2014, but many of the companies are much older in that sense. So there is absolutely a knowledge on how to handle it.
Yeah. All right, and going back to the question before I change the tack, just go back to the technical consultants.
Yeah, so I think the reason why is that we are an entrepreneurial company. I mean, if we see a good opportunity, we will take it. And we had a really good opportunity by recruiting a few key employees that also were able to start up their own company in that sense within Instalco. So we've done it a little bit differently there. For the technical consultant, that company is called Intech. So they're basically running a startup on our startup platform and having their own brand. So it's a separate entity. In the sense that it's not like if we buy one more plumbing company or one industrial company where we kind of keep the name and add part of Instalco. So in that sense, they're running under their own name, Intech, and it's a totally separate business from ours. The reason for that was we wanted to be involved earlier on in the projects. So we get so say a little bit of a warning sign for what's coming in that sense. But also the main thing here is that more and more projects are done sort of say in a partnering solution where you partner up with the other installers, and also you partner up with the construction companies to make the best possible project. And then if we could deliver the whole scope, we have a stronger value proposition for the end customer.
And do you feel that the technical consulting side, I mean, it's a business of its own, but I guess you can also get onto the project earlier on, and in that way, do you feel that it could drive growth in the like later part, or is it going to stay a complete separate part and more maybe an opportunistic opportunity that you saw?
I think a little bit of both. It was an opportunistic possibility that we saw, where we saw a lot of growth possibilities and also a high profitability. And now we're also combining, you know, the theoretical knowledge with the practical knowledge. So I think if we can get them to work together, like I said, in these type of partnering projects, where we can have people that does the calculation and drawings and so forth, understand what is good to install, I think we can get a much better end product for the customer. So I think basically we're talking that we're taking back the technical consultants to where they belong. It is endless discussions on projects at the moment where you have technical consultants sitting on one side of the table and we are on the other side. They have made some drawings or some calculations that they have done at their office, and then we have to install it, and those are not always perfect match, so to say. So we are thinking that okay, we bring them to this side of the table, and we can have a more easy discussion in that sense, and show what is actually working and what is theoretically working, but practically it's harder. So if we can combine that, I think we will have a much stronger end.
But it's not a prerequisite. I mean, and they will be business of their own, and if you get this, it'll be plus.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's the kind of plus if we can get that. But they are running their own business, and I mean, they're taking on projects and so forth. And I think one misunderstanding sometimes is that it is the technical consultants that are employing the installer. That's never the case. I know that there are some people saying that, but I haven't seen that so far. So it is the construction company or the end that they are renting us in. We are never underneath the technical consultants. It's usually the other way around.
And and where are you in this journey in terms of the technical consulting side?
I mean, we have been quite aggressive when it came to growth last year or last 12 months. So, I mean, we have recruited basically 300 technical consultants within a year and a half. So now we're consolidating it a little bit, but then we will also continue to grow. We started up a new entity in Gothenburg a week ago. So I mean, we're constantly growing, but not maybe at the pace that we've had the last 12 months. But we saw a good opportunity last 12 months, so we took it. And now it's also a little bit of consolidating and getting everything.
It's just organic, right? It's just hiring people, hiring on more consultants.
Yeah. So it is, of course, it's so to say a little bit tougher on it's costing us money basically. It's not on the balance sheet. I mean, if we acquire a company, it's on the balance sheet. Now it affects our result a little bit because these guys are, of course, not profitable day one. But it is a long journey ahead, and I mean, we're very convinced that we will make money on this, and we're already seeing that. So to say, people that joined maybe 12, 14 months ago, they are profitable today. So the growth is, sort of say, costing us a little bit. But
looking a year back, you had a total cost and no revenues, and now you at least have some contribution from this business. Yeah.
So yeah, you could basically argue that the guys that have been working or girls that have been working the last 12 months for us, they are contributing to and paying for the growth of the new technical consultants. Absolutely so.
And let's talk a little bit about sustainability. Obviously, on everybody's lips right now, and very important topic for everyone. And where does Instalco fit in this? I mean, how do you contribute, and where are you in the kind of thinking in these kind of terms?
Now, I mean, to me, this is make it or break it, so to say, and I think we are very well positioned to help the society on this, and just by looking at kind of the sustainability and how we live our lives, I think this is extremely important. And I mean, we've just gone through elections in Sweden, and I don't want to be too political here, but I mean, looking at the options that the different parties have, they have nuclear power or they have wind turbines. And to me, I don't put any value on which one you choose, but to me, that's 10, 15, 20 years ahead. That's the kind of horizon we're looking at. And looking at where energy prices are today and where we are in the environment today, we need to act now. And we can help with that. I mean, we can do technical installations that lower the demand a lot. I mean, a lot of projects, I can bring out, I don't know how many examples I can bring out where we actually can reduce energy consumption with 50%. So there are solutions here today that we can use. So we don't have to wait 15 years or 20 years for kind of the politicians to have their solutions. And I mean, this has to be done now. What I like is that the discussion has started. It has kind of enlarged and becoming more and more of a discussion. I think, and of course, energy prices is helping that, because now it actually affects everybody's wallet as well, which is sad that it has to do that. But on the other hand, I'm happy that it does, because then this gets more on top of the agenda. I think next generation, it's on top of their agenda already, but the rest of us needs to get on board, I think. We do this every day. I mean, everything that we install today is better than what we installed 10 years ago, and there's huge difference on development of new products and so forth. I think we're sitting on the solution, but we just need to get it out there and start doing the work. So
yeah, I think you said at some point that every installation you do, I mean, you contribute a lot.
Absolutely. There's no installation that we do today that is worse than we did, so to say, that is making it worse than what it was. And it doesn't matter what we do. I mean, it's everything from changing light bulbs to, I mean, we do a lot of projects with geothermal heating and heat pumps exchanges and so forth. And I mean, all these solar panels, charging poles, I mean, everything like that helps.
Follow up on that, because it's a couple of follow-ups actually. If we start with, I mean, because there obviously, as in all these areas, are two parts of the equation. You have the supply and you have the demand, and it seems like a lot, like you pointed out, a lot of discussion in media and in the open space have been about the supply side. Whereas there has been very little discussion on the demand side. But I also feel that we're starting to get there. There start to be discussions about the demand side, about whether you should have lamps on, turned on or off, etc. Do you feel that has? Do you also feel and do you see that has accelerated and that you maybe be winning a bit of business because of that? Or is it too early to? I think
it's a little too early to say. I'm a little bit concerned also where the discussion is heading. I mean, we're heading a little bit towards, like, what can I do? Okay, we can turn off the lamps. Okay, sure, that's better than nothing, but that's such a small part. That's such a little. I mean, the big thing is like how you heat your house and how you use your hot water. Those are the two. I mean, heating of the house is probably 50 plus per 50, but depending on how you heat your house, it could be between 50 or 80% depending on how you heat your house. And then kind of the water is maybe 20-25%. So here are the big things. Of course, there is a little bit investment involved in this compared to just turning off the lights. That's no investment in that. But here is where we can make a huge difference.
And on that, because that was actually going to be my second question, because we had the Green Deal in EU, and part of the money that went into the market from post the pandemic and to help to get things started was funded in that way. And part of the Green Deal is this renovation initiative to kind of double the renovation rate, because we also know that buildings is one of the main contributors to the CO2 emissions. And is that also too early to say that has that kind of started, or is it also too early to say?
Unfortunately, I would have hoped it would have started more. Unfortunately, I can't say it has, but it's somewhere back there, so to say. And I hope now that also now if new construction comes down a little bit, we will also open up for the possibility, because there's also been a supply and demand miss when it comes to kind of employees. I mean, one of the most troublesome things in our business is to get the right employees on board, and so hopefully we will, so to say, shift focus a little bit on new to renovation instead, which is where the big change can happen. I mean, if we take an old system and put in a new one, that's major differences when it comes to energy consumption. So I hope that we will see more and more of that. I can't say we have seen it yet. We haven't seen the boom yet, but it is there. And also one thing to bear in mind is that an installation doesn't go away in that sense. I mean, I usually take the example, those that listened to me before will hear me say this again, that if you and me don't eat lunch today, we're not going to eat lunch twice tomorrow. But an installation that isn't done today needs to be done tomorrow. Eventually you'll need to replace, so if you don't do it today, you'll need to replace it someday at least. So in that sense I'm quite at ease, even if we would go down in a downturn in that sense, because we always have that to fall back on. And especially when you have energy prices this high, and I don't see energy prices coming down. I mean, it's not like we're going to see Russia turning on the gas, so to say, anytime soon. So I'm quite optimistic about that trend kicking in.
If I try to sum up a little bit, I mean, we are probably going into some kind of recession. We don't know how deep it will be, but there's no really, I mean, there's no real cause for concern in terms of you will do quite okay. You will be able to tackle this. And then most of all, the main driver will continue to be acquisitions. And that market is by no means mature. There's plenty to do still, and especially in industry and in other countries. There's other Nordic countries, and then eventually maybe some other market. Yeah. And then in terms of these political initiatives, you haven't seen much yet, but that they should drive things and maybe accelerate organic growth over the next few years.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
So looking quite optimistic. You feel?
I'm quite optimistic. Of course, there are some clouds kind of in the sky for near term, but I do see the sunshine behind there. So I think now we need to keep on grinding, doing what we do, and continue to work hard and follow a kind of the path that we are on. And if we can do that, I think we can continue to be a very profitable company and stay the course. I do think there are some really good opportunities coming there.
Excellent. Thank you very much for coming here and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Nice.